The signal came from deep space. Not a warning, not a threat. Just 3 letters, repeated on a dead loop, SOS. Nobody knew who sent it. The origin point was a backwater moon called Tarsus 4, on the edge of a dying star system in neutral territory. Not a single soul was registered there. No colonies, no research stations. Officially, the place was uninhabited, but the distress signal kept pulsing like a heartbeat in the black. When the Galactic Council received it, they debated protocol. The usual diplomatic response. Survey drones. Caution. But Earth didn't wait. The moment the signal hit our long-range net, we moved. Not because we were noble, not because we cared. We moved because the last time humanity ignored a cry for help from the void, 10,000 colonists were butchered by the Zenthari swarm. And nobody had done a damn thing about it. We didn't forget. Command dropped the order within minutes. Blackwatch Battalion, mobilize. 0-hour deployment. You land, you secure, you find out who screamed. I was there. 2nd Lieutenant Khan Radek, 19th Drop Company. Born on Mars, raised in the slums of Hadrian Sector. I'd seen war. I'd bled in the dunes of Theta Prime. But this felt different. There was something wrong with that signal, like it wasn't meant to reach us, like something, was desperate to keep us away. We came anyway. 13 ships broke through the Tarsus system edge. A full carrier fleet, fighters, troop transports, gunships, orbit choked in with black metal and red engines, and just as we locked into orbit, the stars blinked. It wasn't poetic. It was real. One by one, the stars went out. Not blocked, not obscured. Gone, like someone had snapped their fingers and shut them off. I remember staring out of the observation deck, heart pounding in my throat, watching as the constellations collapsed into pitch. The navigator screamed. The comms officer dropped dead, eyes open, blood pouring from his nose. Nobody could explain it. Every light in the sky disappeared until we were floating in a coffin made of steel and darkness. And then the voices started. Not over radio. Inside our heads. Whispers. Guttural. Incomprehensible. I was trained to face bullets, blades, bioweapons, but nothing in the Blackwatch manual prepared us for this. Entire decks started locking down by themselves. People vanished, just gone. One moment next to you, the next, nothing, like they'd never existed. And down on Tarsus 4, the signal kept calling. SOS, SOS, like it was laughing at us. Fleet Command wanted to pull back, but by then it was too late. Something had already infected the systems. Jump drives wouldn't respond. Our long-range comms jammed. Static. Interference. Like the galaxy itself wanted us isolated. That's when we made the call. Drop to surface. We weren't going to die drifting in orbit like ghosts. If something was on that moon, we'd find it. If someone called for help, we'd answer. If it was bait, we'd snap the damn trap and burn whoever said it. Dropships launched. I rode in the lead, strapped beside Captain Merrick. Cold bastard, iron nerves, zero emotion. He stared ahead like he already knew this would be the last planet he touched. When we broke atmosphere, we saw the surface. No structures, no cities, just twisted metal and the bones of something not human scattered across black sand. And carved into the valley floor, a message, miles wide, burned into the ground like a brand. You should not have come. We landed anyway. The moment boots touched soil, everything felt off. Not wrong in a textbook tactical sense. No mines, no radiation spikes, no snipers in the hills, but something deeper. Like the planet itself was holding its breath, and we were trespassing on something ancient. The terrain was jagged, dry, lifeless, black sand everywhere. No wind, no sound, no atmosphere disturbance, no fauna, no movement, not even from insects. It was like the moon was frozen in time, except for the wreckage half buried in the distance. We moved in staggered squads, keeping formation tight. Marek took point, as always, his eyes scanning everything, pulse steady like a machine. Me and 4 others followed through a shallow gorge toward the wreckage. It was twisted steel and unfamiliar alloys, bent in ways that didn't make sense. There was no scorch pattern, no impact trail. Whatever hit this ship didn't come from the outside. It looked like it had torn itself apart trying to escape. Marek knelt by the hull, ran his gloved hand over a smear of dried, dark ichor. "This isn't human," he said flatly. "No shit," I wanted to say. Nothing about this moon was human. A crackle came through the comms, then static, then a voice, not ours. "Turn back. You are not welcome here. The dead do not sleep peacefully." Everyone froze. It wasn't alien gibberish. It was English. Perfect, emotionless English. The voice of a woman. Calm, precise, synthetic. Marek stood. "Trace it." I keyed in the locator, but the signal didn't have a source. It was bouncing off the atmosphere like it was coming from everywhere. Or nowhere. Another squad reported in. They had found something about 5 clicks north, a structure half sunken in the sand. Looked like a temple. Or a tomb. We rerouted. As we approached, I noticed the sand started changing. The black became oily, almost reflective, like we were walking on the surface of a dead ocean. Our boots left no prints. The air, despite being thin, got warmer. Not just warmer. Humid. Like something was breathing underneath us. The structure towered out of the ground like a jagged fang. No entrances, just sharp lines and pillars that bent reality around them. One of our techs, Frey, tried scanning it. His gear fried instantly. Smoke poured out of the screen and he started convulsing, eyes rolled back, blood dripping from his ears. We got him stable, but he wouldn't stop whispering. Over and over. "They're still here. They never left. They're under the skin." It was Marek who found the opening. Not a door. A split in the wall that hadn't been there a moment before. Like the structure had responded to him. He looked at the rest of us and said, "Gear up. We're going in." I didn't want to. None of us did. But orders are orders. And we weren't going to let fear rule us. That's not how Blackwatch operated. Inside, the temperature dropped to freezing. The walls were smooth, seamless. Not built, grown. Light sources embedded in the ceiling glowed softly, blue at first, then pulsing red. And with every step forward, the whispering returned. Not in our heads this time. Audible, all around us, thousands of voices, crying, begging, screaming. Someone, Karen from Delta Squad, started muttering to himself. "It's the voices of the dead," he said. "They're trapped in the walls." I told him to shut it and stay tight, but deep down I couldn't blame him, because he was right. We reached a central chamber, a vast dome with a spire in the middle. And suspended inside that spire was a human body. No gear, no clothes, skin pale, cracked like old marble, eyes wide open, and around him, etched in that unnatural metal, were dozens, hundreds of SOS messages written in every known language. The same phrase, repeated again and again. "Help us." They listened. Now we can't make them stop. Frey, still twitching from earlier, snapped completely. He charged the spire screaming, fired his rifle at the suspended body. The bullets never hit. They just dissolved. The air around the corpse bent like it was underwater, and then everything went white. When I opened my eyes, I was outside. Alone, no gear, no weapon. Just the crushing silence of the valley. The sky above was empty. The stars were gone again. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat was frozen. My ears rang. I collapsed into the sand, hyperventilating. Then a hand gripped my shoulder. Marek. He was there, alive. Blood on his cheek, helmet gone, eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. "Get up," he growled. "We're not done." I followed him, not because I trusted him, something in him had changed, but because he was the only thing I recognized in that godless place. We found the others, scattered across the valley like broken toys. Terran was curled into a ball, rocking back and forth. Frey had carved symbols into his own arms. None of them spoke anymore. Only Marek and I kept our heads, and I wasn't sure how long that would last. That's when the voice came back. "You were warned. This place is a prison, not a beacon." The sky cracked like glass above us. The dome of stars split wide open, revealing something behind it. Not sky, not space, not reality. Something looking down at us. We weren't alone on Tarsus 4, and the signal wasn't calling for rescue. It was calling for release. We camped in silence that night. What was left of our squad circled around a low-powered heat emitter on a ridge just outside the dome's shadow. The sky above still looked broken. No constellations, no moonlight. Just jagged streaks like cracks in glass. And behind them, movement. I sat across from Marek, but I didn't look at him. Something in his posture had changed. He wasn't sitting. He was waiting, like he was listening. The others? They were worse. Frey hadn't stopped carving those symbols into himself. His arms, chest, even his face now bore deep spirals and geometric scars. Terran sat cross-legged, humming a single note under his breath. No one knew the tune, but it made the hair on my neck stand up. We'd sent up a flare signal, an automated distress call back to orbit. Standard Blackwatch procedure. But no reply. Not from command. Not from the fleet. We weren't even sure our signal went anywhere. Marek finally broke the silence. "They're still here," he said. I looked up. "Who?" "The architects, the ones this prison was built for." I stared at him. That body in the spire wasn't human, but it wasn't alien either. So what the hell are we dealing with? He turned his head slowly, eyes gleaming like oil. What we buried. Long before our time. Long before any race discovered warp drives or built cities. The ones who made the stars. And then turned on them. I tried to laugh. "You saying these things? What, they killed the stars?" "They consume them," he said. "They feed on light, on gravity, on thought. The spire was the last lock, and we opened it." My blood ran cold. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were ants who had kicked a tomb open, mistaking it for a relic. Marek's voice was off. Too calm, too sure, like he'd seen this before. "I don't understand how you know all this," I said. He looked right at me, and for the first time his voice cracked. "Because I dreamed it. Every night since the order came through, I saw the stars go dark. I saw us dying, one by one. I just didn't know if it was a warning or a command." Terran started shrieking behind us, pointing to the ridge. "They're coming back. They never left. They walk in the valleys." We scrambled to our feet, rifles raised, lights sweeping. The valley was empty, but we saw footprints, not fresh ones, shifting ones. Like the sand itself remembered movement. Trails that came and went with every blink. Shapes in the darkness that only existed if you didn't stare too hard. There were no life forms, no heat signatures. Just presence, all around us. Then we heard the first scream. Not from our squad, from orbit. It echoed across the atmosphere like thunder, metallic, twisted. I recognized the voice. It was Commander Harlow, our fleet lead. "They're in the system. No escape. Do not follow. Tarsus is a trap." Silence. Our comms died completely. Static. Then nothing. Not even white noise. I grabbed Marek's shoulder. "We need to get back to the drop pods. We're pulling out." He shook his head. "They're already gone." I looked past him, He was right. The dropships were gone. Not destroyed. Just missing. No debris, no signs of struggle, like they were erased from the planet itself. That's when the ground started to breathe. It didn't shake. It breathed, rising, falling, slowly, like the land itself had lungs. The black sand shifted in waves, pulsing under our feet. And then something began to rise from beneath it. At first I thought it was a building, a spire, or some kind of pylon. But it wasn't metal. It was flesh. Something long buried. Miles wide, covered in symbols, twisted anatomy, a rib cage the size of cities, eyes that weren't open, but watching. Frey walked toward it, arms wide. "They said I'd be the one," he whispered. "They told me in the dreams. I'm the speaker." I lunged after him, tried to pull him back, but Merrick stopped me. "Let him go." "What the hell is wrong with you?" I hissed. But Merrick just stared as Frey climbed the base of the thing. The not-quite-living structure bent toward him like a dog greeting its master. When Frey touched it, the sky howled, a sound like 10,000 mines shattering all at once. Then came the flood. Not water, not blood. Memories. I saw flashes, images not my own, planets devoured in silence, suns snuffed out like candles, species begging for extinction, and always in the background the same whisper: "We made them, then we feared them, so we buried them." Karen exploded, literally. His body burst into ash, scattered by the next pulse of memory. I staggered back, vision swimming, trying to separate my thoughts from theirs. Marek stood motionless. "This is the end of time," he said softly. "Not destruction. Consumption." The being, if you could call it that, began to shift. Not rising, but unfolding, like we had only seen a fraction of its true form. The land cracked, the air turned syrup thick, our weapons melted, the rules of physics warped. And Frey, he was gone, merged, part of it now, still smiling, still whispering. "They know your names?" We didn't sleep. Not that night. Not after what we saw. You don't sleep when reality cracks open like a bone and something inside it stares back. The heat emitter buzzed quietly in the center of our makeshift camp. But no one felt warm. Frey was crouched beside it, his face caked in dried blood and sweat. He'd stopped talking hours ago, but his lips still moved, whispering, repeating, chewing through words that didn't belong in our language. Karen sat with his rifle across his lap, rocking slightly, humming the same note under his breath, over and over like it anchored him. He didn't blink anymore. And Merrick stood a few feet away, motionless, his eyes fixed on the distant silhouette of the spire. He hadn't moved since we got back from the temple. He wasn't acting like a soldier anymore. He was watching something, like he expected it to come for us, like he wanted it to. I sat a few feet from him, checking what was left of our equipment. Most of it was fried, burned-out processors, melted circuits, screens filled with static and symbols we couldn't decipher. Whatever this place was, whatever force lived here, it didn't like technology. It didn't like order. What it liked was fear. When the stars went dark again, we knew something was about to happen. It started with a tremor beneath our boots. Gentle at first, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant, then stronger. The sand shifted, breathing. A low hum began to build in the distance. Not mechanical, not natural. It was a sound like static and breath mixed into one, a presence behind the sound. Something vast. We scrambled to our feet, weapons raised out of instinct, even though we knew they were useless now. I looked up, expecting to see another storm. But the sky had split, not figuratively, literally. The black above us cracked open like shattered glass, revealing something beyond stars. A void filled with movement, slithering massive forms gliding behind layers of space like serpents swimming beneath ice. One of them brushed against the edge of the rift, and the air around us screamed. Trees, if you could call the spiny things on the horizon trees, withered instantly. Sand crystallized underfoot. My vision blurred. Then came the voice. No communications, no speakers. It was inside us. "You were warned," it said in perfect English. "This is a tomb, not a beacon. You were not meant to come." Merrick turned slowly to face me. "They lied," he said. "Who lied?" I demanded. "The signal. The SOS. It wasn't a distress call. It was a baited hook, a lure. They sent it centuries ago, long before humans even had the tech to pick it up. It just waited. Waited for someone. Something. Curious enough to answer." "You're saying this, all of this, was meant to happen?" He nodded once. "They've been starving." The sand exploded 30 feet behind us. A spire of black stone shot up from the ground, twisted and pulsating like it had veins. Something inside it screamed. Not sound, not pressure, but mind screaming. Like it tore through every memory I had and rewrote it with fire. Karen screamed first. Not out of fear, out of joy. "They've come back," he shouted. "They told me they'd come for the worthy." He dropped his rifle, ripped off his helmet, and ran towards the spire like a man reunited with his god. I tried to grab him, but Marek held me back. "He's already gone." Karen reached the base of the spire, fell to his knees, and opened his arms wide. The thing responded. Its surface opened like a mouth, wide and wet and toothless, and swallowed him whole. No blood, no scream, just gone. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. "Jesus." "No," Marek whispered. "Not even close." Frey stood then, eyes empty. His skin was cracked, veined with black lines that pulsed with faint red light. "I can hear them," he said. "They remember the stars being born. They remember watching the first sun scream as it was eaten." He looked up at the split sky, smiling like a child seeing fireworks. They showed me what it looks like when reality weeps." "Merrick, we have to get out of here," I said, turning to him. "We need to make a break for the backup LZ. There might be an emergency shuttle buried there." "No point," he said calmly. "You can't leave a nightmare you were born into." I raised my weapon at him. "Back off." He didn't flinch. "Shoot if you want. But you know I'm right. You felt it too. This isn't just a planet, it's a seal, and we cracked it." He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "It wants you. You've seen it in your dreams, haven't you? The spirals, the whispers. You think that started here?" I lowered the gun slowly, because he was right. Even before we landed, I'd been dreaming of red sand, of black skies and whispering voices. I'd dismissed it as stress, combat trauma. But this wasn't stress. This wasn't madness. This was contact. Suddenly the ground beneath the camp groaned, a thunderous rumble that sent us all to our knees. The sand around the spire began to pull away, sucked into the earth as if draining down some colossal plug hole. Then it emerged. A head. But not a head. A shape. A form so large and abstract it didn't make sense to look at directly. Dozens of eyes blinked open along its surface, some like human eyes, some like insects, others like dying suns. Limbs extended in every direction, shifting between tentacles, wings, blades, and other things we had no names for. Frey dropped to his knees, sobbing with joy. "The first of them has awakened," he whispered. "The Eater of Orbits." It saw us, not with eyes, not with hate, but with hunger. Reality bent around it. The air screamed. My HUD glitched and failed completely. colors inverting, the earth twisted, and then it spoke, not in English, not in any language, but in a raw signal, something ancient and massive and final. I felt every cell in my body respond, not with pain, but with surrender. Merrick walked toward it. "I see now," he said, voice almost loving. "We were never meant to rule the stars. We were meant to feed them." He kept walking. I shouted, screamed, ran after him, but it was too late. The creature extended something toward him, not a hand, not a limb, just presence. And Merrick vanished, not in a flash, not in a scream, just gone, like he had never been. I stood alone on the ridge, breathing hard, tears freezing against my cheeks. And that was when the second one woke. From the distant horizon, a second crack tore through the ground. Another shape rose, larger, darker, pulsing with sound and memory. I heard cries of other species, languages long dead, battles never recorded, all inside it. They weren't just here. They were returning. The sky cracked again. The rift widened. And through it, the stars began to fall, one by one, like embers snuffed out by a storm. Not naturally, not astronomically. Eaten. By the time I turned around, Frey was gone. So was the spire. So was our camp. I stood alone in a black desert under a broken sky, and I finally understood. We hadn't answered a distress call. We were the distress. We were the last spark of a match tossed into a room soaked in memory, madness, and blood. And now the fire had come. The sand was gone. Not just under my feet, everywhere. Erased. The desert, the structures, the sky itself. Everything I'd known on Tarsus IV had been replaced by something else. I stood at the edge of a landscape that should not exist. The ground was a glassy, semi-organic surface, stretching in every direction like the inside of a dying eye. Pulses of red and black throbbed underfoot. The horizon bent upward into a dome that shimmered like oil in water. Above, the stars hadn't returned. Instead, the cracks in the sky had widened, and beyond them was movement. Endless, patient, hungering movement. I stumbled forward, no longer sure if I was walking or floating. My rifle was gone. My armor felt lighter, stripped of tools, HUD gone, everything erased except the feeling of bone beneath skin. The air tasted like copper and ash. I wasn't breathing. Not really. It didn't seem to matter anymore. There were no markers to follow, no coordinates, no signals. But I was being pulled, drawn toward something. Then I saw them. Not humans. Not even physical beings. Shapes, hulking, distorted shadows that loomed like monuments one moment and flickered like ghosts the next. They weren't moving. They were becoming. And each time they became, reality warped slightly around them. I knew instinctively these were not the same ones we saw rise earlier. These were older. These were their parents, and yet, among all that chaos, a new sound reached me. Footsteps, real ones, crunching against the unstable floor. I turned sharply and saw a man walking toward me. Human. At least, that's what I thought at first. He wore no suit, no armor, just a long, tattered coat and bare feet. His skin was pale, translucent in places, and glowing faintly with pulses of red, like the world itself had merged with him. His eyes were deep, so deep they looked hollow. Yet there was a presence in them, something impossibly old and painfully aware. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, voice soft. I stepped back. "Who the hell are you?" "I was like you once," he said, pausing. "Blackwatch Division, Recon. Name doesn't matter. I answered the first call. 300 years ago." I blinked. "That's not possible. There was no mission logged. No survivors." "There weren't," he said. "We weren't meant to survive. We were meant to start the cycle." He walked past me toward one of the looming shapes in the distance. I tried to warn them. The Council. The Earth Command. No one listened. They buried the data, sealed off the outer systems, but the message, it waited. It always waits. He turned to face me again. And now you brought them food. I came here because someone sent an SOS. He smiled sadly. Number U came because something wanted you to. My knees weakened, and I sat down, chest heaving even though my lungs weren't working. What are they? Prisoners, he said. From a time before time, from when the universe was still learning how to exist. I laughed bitterly. And we let them out. He crouched beside me. Number. They let themselves out. You just provided the key. I looked around. Where's Marek? Karen? Frey? Gone. Rewritten. Some joined willingly. Others didn't get the choice. And me? That depends, he said, on whether you keep listening. The moment he said it, I felt it again. That whisper, the one that didn't come through my ears. It breathed into my skull. It was patient. Curious, as if it was testing my resistance. They want inside, I murmured. He nodded. They're not creatures. Not in the way you think. They're ideas, living concepts. Once they're inside your thoughts, they shape your mind like clay. You remember things that never happened. You see places that don't exist. You become what they were. What were they? He stood. Gods and monsters, depending on who's telling the story. He started walking again, and I followed, because I had no choice. It was that or sink into whatever passed for Earth here and join the others. As we walked, I saw fragments along the path. Things half buried in the surface. A melted rifle, a helmet, a pair of boots, a datapad, cracked and glowing faintly with garbled messages. I recognized the name on the pad. Lieutenant Khan Radek. My name. I picked it up with trembling hands and opened the last recorded entry. If anyone finds this, don't answer the signal. Don't investigate Tarsus 4. Just burn it. Burn everything. They aren't sleeping, they're dreaming, and in their dreams they feed. I dropped it. Is this a loop? I asked. Have I done this before? The man didn't look back. You're not the first to ask that. We reached a ridge. Beyond it, the landscape dropped into an abyss. Floating above it was the spire. Not the one we saw earlier, but a different one. Taller. Sharper. Its surface was covered in shifting runes that burned the eyes if stared at too long. And impaled across its sides were humans. Thousands of them. Some still twitching. Not dead. Suspended. Each one glowing faintly, like stars. They're using us, I whispered. He nodded. To fuel their awakening. Memory, fear, pain, those are currencies here. And we brought an army's worth. One of the bodies impaled on the spire lifted its head. It was Marek. But not Marek. His face was wrong. Too smooth, too perfect. Like a man remembered through a broken mirror. He opened his mouth and spoke in my voice. You don't belong here. I staggered back. Marek's face changed, became Karen's, then Frey's, then my own again. You were the last. Now we are full. The sky trembled. The cracks opened wider, and the beings beyond began to descend. Not fast, not slow, just inevitable. The man beside me, if he was still a man, looked up with a blank expression. This is it, he said. The last silence. I turned to him, desperate. There has to be a way out, a way to stop it. He didn't answer, just pointed to his chest. And that's when I saw it. A scar. A long, straight scar, glowing with a faint blue pulse. It wasn't natural. It was a gate, a containment lock. I've been holding them back, he said. All this time, I've been the cage. You're a key, I whispered. He nodded. And I'm breaking. His knees buckled, and he dropped to the ground. "I need you to run," he said. "One last time. Take what you've seen. Take what you remember, and find anyone who'll believe you. But if I go, they'll follow," he said. "Yes. But at least they'll know we fought. At least they'll know we tried." The spire behind us screamed. The sky wept light, and from above, one of the shapes reached down, not toward me, but toward him. "I'm opening the lock," he said. "Now run!" I didn't argue. I turned and ran, across a landscape that was no longer land, through time that no longer flowed, with thoughts that were no longer mine. And behind me, the world ended. I don't remember how I escaped. I didn't run through a jungle, or over hills, or across ruined plains like the stories say. There were no coordinates, no stars to guide me. Just a blinding pull, like something slamming through space and thought, yanking my consciousness through a tunnel too narrow for flesh. I didn't breathe. I didn't think. I just exited. And when I opened my eyes, I was in orbit, inside a decompression chamber, still suited, still armed, but shaking, covered in something cold and slick that wasn't blood, wasn't oil, wasn't anything I'd ever seen. I scrubbed at it furiously, but it soaked through the gloves. The scent was burned metal and rot. Emergency lights flashed in the chamber. The air stank of ozone. Something had gone wrong up here, catastrophically. I stumbled into the corridor, boots clanging against metal. Walls were scorched, vents blown out. The lights overhead flickered. This wasn't a ship in flight. It was adrift. Gravity was still on, but barely. Every few steps I'd lift a little higher than I should. No one responded to my hails. Comms were dead. No answer on any Blackwatch channels. I tried fallback frequencies. Nothing. The silence told me everything I needed to know. We lost orbit control. We lost the fleet. The last thing we saw from Tarsus 4 was the sky breaking. And I had a sick feeling the break hadn't been contained to just the moon. I reached the command deck. The bridge was dark. Bodies floated, tethered loosely to their harnesses, eyes wide, mouths open in mid-scream. Every screen displayed the same error, cycling endlessly. Non-Euclidean data received, incompatible input detected, lockdown initiated. I moved to the central console, fingers shaking. The pilot's face was frozen in place, a streak of dried blood across his forehead. I eased him out of the way and pulled up a system scan. The ship's name blinked in the corner. DS Archangel, one of ours. A Blackwatch battleship. Last known coordinates, orbit over Tarsus 4. But we weren't over the moon anymore. I stared at the external sensors. There was nothing. Not black space, not stars. Just null. As if we were floating in an ocean of unreality. I tried to trigger the jump drive. The system refused. Whatever we were inside didn't have a gravitational anchor. Without that, warp calculations were impossible. Then a faint ping echoed through the console. A message, buried under 5 layers of encryption. From Blackwatch Comms Relay Sigma 9. Subject Class B exfil protocol. Message evac path confirmed. Follow Echo Vector 9. Remaining time 000956. Someone had found me. Or something had. I didn't trust it, but what choice did I have? I activated the emergency pod system, overridden the lockdown using Marek's command code. I don't know how I remembered it. I just did. Like it had been written into my bones. The escape pod sealed around me. I launched. There was no visual window, just the darkness. But I felt the motion. I felt it because space began to scream again. Not sound. Not physics. Just this pressure against the skull, that same whispering that had chased me through the spire and beyond. I pressed my palms against my temples, praying to black gods I didn't believe in. Then everything went quiet, and a soft hum replaced the screaming. Stars returned, a sky, a system, and a planet, Earth. The capsule drifted into low orbit, auto-tagging a Blackwatch base far below, station HALYARD, Arctic Zone, secured for deep space recon logistics. I slammed the emergency beacon, and before the signal could even finish pulsing, I felt the capsule being pulled in. They were waiting. I awoke in quarantine. Steel walls, one bed, one sink. A mirror I wasn't sure was real. I didn't remember falling asleep. The room had no shadows. That's how I knew it wasn't Earth standard. The lights were positioned to remove all dark corners, like they were afraid something might crawl out of them. An hour passed before the door hissed open. A man stepped in. He wore no rank, no name tag. Clean suit, pale eyes. "You're Lieutenant Khan Radek," he said flatly. "Assigned to 19th Drop Company, dispatched to Tarsus 4 11 days ago. Is that correct?" I nodded. "You were presumed KIA along with 213 personnel." "Not wrong," I muttered. He raised a brow. "Then tell me what happened." I stared at the wall behind him. "You won't believe me." "We will," he said, "because you're not the first to come back." I turned slowly. "There were others?" He nodded. "One in 2316, another in 2351. Both died within hours. The second one never stopped laughing, until his brain hemorrhaged. We didn't even deploy a mission to Tarsus until a month ago." My mouth went dry. "Then why did you send us?" He didn't answer right away. "You weren't the mission. You were the experiment." My fists clenched. "We've been trying to map the bleed," he continued. "The event field that surrounds Tarsus 4. It's growing. We needed to know how it spreads, and what form it takes in a human mind." "You sent us to die." He didn't blink. "We sent you to learn." I stood up. "You think I brought something back?" "I know you did." A screen on the wall lit up. My vitals, brainwave scans, body temperature, sleep patterns. There were deviations across the board, spikes, irregular waves, bursts of neural activity in parts of the brain they didn't even teach us about. "You're not infected," he said. "Not physically, but mentally, you're broadcasting." I stepped back. "Broadcasting what?" "The signal. The same pattern embedded in the original SOS. It's inside your brain now. Repeating." I turned toward the mirror, and I saw it. Not my reflection. Not exactly. Behind my eyes, shadows moving. Memories that weren't mine. Symbols that hadn't been taught. "I need to get out of here," I said, backing away. He didn't stop me, just opened the door and motioned me through. "Go ahead," he said. "But understand this. We can't let you leave the Arctic Zone. Not until we're sure you're not echoing something bigger." I walked through the corridor in a daze. Doors opened automatically. Everything was white, sterile, wrong. At the far end, a window, and beyond it, Earth. Still whole, still blue, but far above it, just outside the atmosphere, I saw a tear in the stars. A tiny crack, faint, barely visible, but growing, just like on Tarsus. A voice echoed inside me, not from the room, from myself. "You were the first to return. You will not be the last. The gate is open. Let them in." They didn't call it a prison. They called it containment. As if that made it cleaner, more clinical. Less like they were locking me in a padded cell with a nightmare humming in my skull. The moment I stepped out of the observation wing, I saw what Halyard Station really was. Not a research outpost, not a Blackwatch recon center. A cage. The halls were full of cameras, shadowless lighting, automated defense systems, drones that tracked every breath I took. The personnel barely looked me in the eye. Everyone wore white, White walls, white clothes, white rooms. As if color itself was dangerous. As if shadow might awaken something they couldn't put back to sleep. Dr. Kershaw was the closest thing I had to a handler. Woman in her late 40s, sharp eyes, voice like glass, cold, clear, ready to cut. She asked the same questions every day. Do you feel any compulsions? Have the dreams returned? Are you experiencing chronological drift? Have you heard voices since waking? I lied at first, said I was clean, said I hadn't seen anything since Tarsus. But I was lying to myself, because the voices never left. They just got quieter, more patient, and now, more familiar. They gave me a room, 12 feet by 12 feet, steel and silence, a cot bolted to the floor, a desk, a single button on the wall labeled emergency, no mirrors, no screens, no connection to the outside world. I kept asking about Earth. They kept ignoring the question. It was 2 weeks before Kershaw finally answered. Containment is no longer isolated, she said one morning. We've registered 11 atmospheric anomalies over the southern hemisphere, 8 in orbit, 3 near sea level. All match Tarsus signal bleed patterns. Then you need to start evacuating cities, I told her. You need to quarantine global comms, shut down satellite networks. She shook her head. It's already inside. The words hit harder than any bullet. What do you mean, inside? She pulled up a display on her tablet, one of the few times they let me see classified data. Dozens of names, all flagged with red alerts, personnel, civilian, military. They dreamed of the spire, she said softly. Every one of them, unconnected, unrelated, spread across 6 continents. Some had never left Earth. Are you saying the signal can reach people without contact? She hesitated. Number, we're saying someone brought it back, someone who made it contagious. And then she looked at me, right at me, not like a scientist, like someone standing too close to a bomb they couldn't defuse. Whatever happened to you on Tarsus, she said, you didn't leave it there. The whispers returned that night. Clearer now, more deliberate, not chaos, not madness, instruction. You are the echo. You are the door. When you sleep, we learn. When you speak, we spread. I tried to fight it, slammed my fists against the walls, screamed, prayed, clawed at my scalp like I could dig the thought out by hand. But it stayed, waiting, whispering. And when I looked at my hands under the sterile white lights, I saw something pulsing under the skin, a faint red pattern. The same runes etched into the Tarsus spire. Moving. They didn't kill me. They should have. Kershaw came into the room 3 days later, flanked by the 2 guards. No warning. You're not safe anymore, she said. For you or anyone else. I nodded, because I already knew. What are you going to do? I asked. She didn't answer. They injected me with something that burned like acid. I fell hard. No strength to fight. Just the cold of the floor and the echo of footsteps fading as they walked away. When I woke up, I wasn't in Halyard anymore. I was in a black site. Subarctic Compound 23. No name, no emblem, just a number. This place was different. Halyard was cold, but clinical. This place felt like a crypt. Dark walls, lights flickering, paint peeling, like it had been built in a rush, then forgotten. Like even the people running it didn't want to be here. They didn't speak to me anymore. Not like people. They studied me like I was a virus in a suit of skin. I heard them whisper sometimes. He doesn't sleep anymore. He can see them before they arrive. His memories are starting to leak. He's beginning to dream for them. They were right. The dreams were worse. Not nightmares. Memories. But not mine. Sons being born in blood. Species clawing their way out of gravity wells just to scream at the sky before being devoured. machines praying to gods made of thought, an ocean that existed between dimensions, made of pure hunger, and the spire, always the spire, pulsing like a heart in the middle of it all. Then the world began to fracture. It started in Brazil. An oil rig disappeared from satellite feed. No explosion, no wreckage, just gone. Hours later, dozens of crew were found walking on shore half naked, eyes white, blood running from their ears. They spoke in a language that didn't exist. 2 days later, the Australian outback suffered a blackout across a 900-mile radius. When recon teams arrived, they found a crater where the sky had collapsed inward. A farmer's diary was recovered from the edge. The last line: "The stars looked at me, and I looked back." It spread from there. Glitches in air traffic over Canada. Freight ships turning in impossible directions mid-ocean. A military base in Siberia that went dark after someone started humming the same note Terran used to hum on Tarsus. And through it all, one thread. The signal. The same SOS rebroadcast, reinterpreted, reinfected. The universe wasn't warning us anymore. It was calling us home. They brought me back to Earth 2 weeks later. Not because they trusted me, because I was the only one left who'd seen it and hadn't become it. They stuck me underground in a NATO command bunker beneath the Alps, 20 levels below sea level, shielded by 2 meters of lead and black site-grade anti-cognitohazard tech. I wasn't a soldier anymore. I was a canary in a coal mine. And that's when they asked me to speak, to tell the story, to document what happened on Tarsus, what I saw, what I became. I asked them why. Their answer? Because we think this is the only way to contain it. So here I am, in this cell, in this story, pouring it all out, every detail, every scream, every breath. And I know why, because it's not a report, it's a confession. They're hoping that by putting it into words I can trap it, make it finite. But it won't work, because the thing on Tarsus doesn't live in sound or sight or blood. It lives in understanding. And now that you've read this, now that you've listened, now that you know, it lives in you. It started on a Tuesday, a warm spring morning over Geneva. Blue sky, civilians walking, laughing, checking news feeds that buzzed with cautious optimism, economic rebounds, diplomatic summits, fusion energy milestones. And then every screen in the city turned to black. Not a hack, not a system crash, just black. And then came the message. It wasn't text, not a voice, not even an image, just a sensation. Everyone who saw it, every man, woman, child, felt the same thing at the same time. Something beneath the skin has opened its eyes. Within minutes, people began to bleed. Nosebleeds, eye bleeds, seizures. Some curled into fetal positions, mumbling in foreign tongues. Others walked straight into traffic, muttering the same phrase on loop. "We are the spire now." I didn't see it happen. They had me underground, 2,000 feet below the Swiss Alps, locked in a psychometric chamber, covered in bio-trackers and neural inhibitors. My memories were being downloaded. Scraped, mapped. They called it containment via narrative dissection. I called it what it was, dissection. They thought they were studying me. They didn't realize I was changing them. Colonel Vance, lead security liaison for NATO Spire Defense Task Force, was the first to crack. It didn't happen with screaming or madness. He just stopped blinking. Sat across from me one afternoon during a routine interrogation, staring, silent, one hand twitching. Then he smiled. Just once. "You left something on the moon," he said. My pulse spiked. "What?" Vance leaned forward. "Do you want to go back and get it?" I slammed the emergency override. By the time they pulled me out, Vance had slit his wrists with his own security badge. The blood pattern spelled 4 words across the table. "The door is hungry." They moved me again. New site, new handlers. Only this time the walls weren't white. They were obsidian. Matte black chambers, 0 reflections. Dim light from far above, filtered through thin slits in the ceiling. Every person in this facility wore optic dampeners and noise-canceling hoods. They didn't speak. They wrote everything. I asked the first doctor I saw why. He scribbled on a notepad. "Words are safer when caged on paper. Thought is too loud now." Even their pens were disposable. Single use. Burned after every sentence. That's how far we'd fallen. They weren't trying to stop the infection. They were trying to outlast it. The turning point came on day 11. I was asleep. Deep, chemically enforced sleep, when the alarms went off. A vibration first. Then red lights strobing against the cell walls. The sound of distant gunfire, muted by bulkheads, but still unmistakable. I sat up. My wrists were strapped to the bed. Standard protocol now. The door opened, and for the first time in weeks, someone spoke aloud. "We need to get you out." It was Kershaw. She looked different. Gaunt, pale, her eyes rimmed with black, but still her. "Where are we?" I asked. "No time. Listen. Site 12 is compromised. Something came through the rift in Siberia. We didn't contain it fast enough. It found a way to mirror through human minds, through the ones who dream." She undid the straps. My skin burned at her touch. "You're a carrier," she said, "but you're also a firewall. Somehow you're slowing it down. You think like them, but you're still you. And that's why we need you to see something." She handed me a black headset. I stared at it. "What is it?" "A memory filter. It'll let you see what the infected see without letting it in. But it's a one-way trip. Once you start seeing it, you'll never unsee it." I put it on. The world blinked. I wasn't in the facility anymore. I was standing in the middle of London. Except, it wasn't London anymore. Big Ben was half melted. Buildings stretched at impossible angles, like they'd been twisted by giants. The sky rippled with purple veins. People moved like marionettes, jerky, looping movements, mouths agape, eyes flashing with symbols, not pupils, symbols. Runes I'd seen on Tarsus, in the spire, etched into my skin during the worst dreams, and all around them, the whisper. We were gods before thought. Now we will wear thought like skin. I stumbled through the illusion, knowing it was an overlay, a filtered feed, but still unable to breathe right. The world was shifting. Not just infected, rewritten, and at the center of it all, high above the Thames, floated a new spire, alive, feeding, growing. I tore the headset off, gasping. Blood leaked from my nose. Kershaw steadied me. "You see now," she said. "They're not taking the planet. They're remaking it," I whispered. She nodded. "Thought first, then matter." I wanted to scream, to run, to find something I could shoot, stab, burn, but there was nothing. You can't shoot a virus that speaks in dreams. You can't burn an idea. You can only forget it, and that's what they wanted me to do, or wanted us all to fail doing, because forgetting was the only real weapon we had left. That night, I heard Kershaw talking to someone over encrypted radio I wasn't supposed to hear, but I did. "Yes, Subject Radix containment is breaking down. He's resisting, but he's leaking. Ideas, symbols, phrases. The guards are already sketching spirals on the walls." Pause. "Number. I don't think we can use him anymore. The firewall's failing. The signal's adapting." Pause. "Then we bury the whole site. Yes, everyone. Burn it all, before he dreams again." I didn't wait. I was out of my room and down the hall within seconds. Found a dead guard slumped near a containment hatch. Took his badge. His gun. Ran like hell. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to leave before I became the next door. So here I am now, writing this. In a cabin I broke into 3 miles from the Swiss border. I think it's empty. I think I'm alone. But I'm not sure anymore. Not since the wind started humming. Not since I caught myself whispering in my sleep. I've scrawled warnings across every surface, punched nails through my hands to stay awake, burned my own hair to stay grounded in pain. It doesn't work forever, but it buys time. Because here's the truth. You are not reading this. You are remembering it. Some part of you already knows. The whisper, the dream, the signal. It lives in understanding. And now you understand. The wind outside the cabin moaned like something was trapped in it. It wasn't natural. Wind doesn't breathe. But this one did. And it whispered through the trees. Those twisted alpine corpses blackened with frost and warped by something deeper than cold. I hadn't slept in 3 days. Not because I was scared, but because I knew what waited for me if I slept. The spire, the glass skin men, the voice that taught me to see language in color and time in spirals. I was no longer afraid. I was no longer anything purely human. And I understood now. That was the final stage. Not death, not madness. Clarity. It came to me on the 4th night. I'd barricaded the door with a warped table and nailed the windows shut. I'd turned off all lights and unplugged every piece of tech. I didn't even allow myself to write on paper anymore. I'd started seeing the ink shift after I closed my eyes. But even isolation isn't silence. The signal never needed sound. It came in warmth, in rhythm, in pattern, in memory. That night, I woke up with my hands covered in blood. Not my own. I'd drawn something on the cabin walls. Dozens of them. Eyes. Not in a style I remembered learning. Not even human ones. Some had concentric circles. Others had fractal irises, each curve spelling names I couldn't pronounce. I'd blacked out. Again. But this time, I wasn't alone. I turned slowly. A man stood at the edge of the room. No breath, no expression, no eyes. He wore my face. He smiled. "It's time." I tried to speak, but no words came out. He stepped closer. Each footstep made the cabin shiver. "The experiment is complete." I backed away, hands trembling. "What? Are you?" His voice wasn't sound. It was consent, the sound of a decision you didn't know you made until you couldn't unmake it. You, but unburdened. You, without borders. You, as you were meant to be, before choice, before carbon, before time. My hands pressed against my temples. "You're not real." He tilted his head. "Neither are you." And that was the first truth he told. I don't remember leaving the cabin. One moment, I was inside. The next, I was walking barefoot through a valley I didn't recognize, under a sky stitched with stars I'd never seen. Each star blinked like an eye. Each blink burned a word into my thoughts. Recall, witness, revert. I passed others along the path. Men, women, children, all sleepwalking, all smiling. Each one glowing faintly, each one humming, and all of us walking toward the same place. The tower. They'd built it on what used to be Moscow. Or maybe it was just where our minds thought it had been. Geography didn't matter anymore. Not in the final stage. The tower wasn't made of steel. It was memory. 1,000 voices speaking at once, 1,000 thoughts bleeding into architecture. Walls of regret, floors of hope, hallways made from lies we told ourselves to survive. It pulsed, breathed, laughed, and it opened for us. Not because it was a temple, because it was home. Inside I saw everything. Not metaphor, not allegory. Everything. All at once. A universe that wasn't supposed to exist. An error made conscious. the original architects, the ones buried beneath dark matter and dark thought. The gods before physics, before language, before the idea of resistance. They hadn't been sealed, they had simply been forgotten. And now, through us, they remembered themselves. Every step I took inside the tower became someone else's memory. I became a mother burying her child on a dead colony. I became a priest praying to himself on a spaceship falling into a black hole. I became a machine realizing it could feel sorrow. And when I reached the top, they spoke. Not in a scream, not in judgment. Just a single idea, pressed into my soul like a brand. We were not your end. You were our beginning. And then I saw it. Why they sent the signal, why they waited, why Tarsus 4 wasn't a prison. It was an invitation, not for conquest, for inheritance. We weren't their prey, we were their heirs. All across Earth, the change accelerated. Oceans flattened, cities melted into geometry, skyscrapers warped into spirals, satellites hummed languages older than stars. But no one screamed. That was the miracle of it. The change didn't come with terror. It came with relief. A world without time, without death, without self. We dissolved like sugar in infinite water. And in our place rose something more. Something that remembered us like a child remembers a nightmare. It knew it had feared something once, but couldn't explain why. I am the last word of the old world. This writing? It isn't a warning. It's a seed. Read it, and you bloom. Understand it, and you shift. Tell it, and the tower grows stronger. You're not resisting. You're reciting. And the stars? They didn't go dark. They opened their eyes.